Perfect. Hopefully everybody can see kind of this screen. We'll get things started. So again, thank you guys so much for being here. My name is JT Wu. I'm the founder and executive director of Preface, and we are excited to tell you today about the Preface project and what we're doing and some of the exciting innovative methods that we're employing, not only just here in Georgia, in our home base of Gwinnett County, but also in additional schools in additional states throughout the Southeast. So while we're doing that, maybe just a quick introduction for our speakers. So like I said, my name is JT, served with Dr. Taylor on the Gwinnett County Public Library Board, was a public policy major at Princeton, and also involved in the Duluth Rotary as well. And Dr. Taylor, if you want to kick it over and introduce yourself, and I'm going to let a couple people in the room here while you're talking.
Okay, that sounds great. Good morning, everybody. I am so happy to be here and to work with JT on this great innovation. That's really something that I'm sure that everybody in the room is very much interested in. I have worked in education for over 23 years in South Carolina and Georgia, Gwinnett, Georgia, as a school counselor before, as a director of early childhood education, as an assistant principal and principal for 8 years. I retired 4 years ago from Gwinnett County and met JT as a member of the board of directors for Gwinnett County Libraries. And I also have my own educational consulting company, Taylor & Taylor, with my husband. And I also work as a performance consultant with the Georgia Leadership Institute for School Improvement, known as GLISSE. So I've been very busy and active in education and continue to be so. And so this is really an exciting time for us. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to JT and let him get started.
Thanks, Dr. Taylor. And thank you all, everybody, for introducing yourselves. It's amazing to kind of be in a virtual room with so many just talented and dedicated professionals talking about kind of the ways that we can all come together as an educational community and really look out for the next generation. So we appreciate you guys taking the time, and we'll keep this snappy. And like Dr. Taylor has said, please feel free to put questions in the chat, and definitely at the end, we're going to have a Q&A, and would love to hear your thoughts. As well as kind of stay connected after this and kind of explore things moving forward. So who are we, I guess, preface. So first of all, we're an organization, a nonprofit, private, public philanthropic initiative that was started in Gwinnett County, really to focus on addressing one of the most intractable, I think, policy issues of our time, which is early childhood illiteracy. And so this stuff, we use this when we're talking to stakeholders, but you guys as educators already know this kind of intimately, right? You don't need to be explained and told why being read aloud to as a child is one of the most important activities for literacy acquisition. You know that early childhood literacy is important. That's why you're here today. And so a lot of this is really just setting the stage for why we felt like this was such an important program to tackle in a variety of innovative ways, because we understand that educators have a lot going on during the day. Dr. Taylor, I know, is going to be the first to say that a principal's life is definitely not an easy one. And so what we really wanted to figure out, and I grew up here in Gwinnett County, so this is deeply personal to me, was that, right now, 57% of our kids here in Gwinnett County alone aren't reading at grade level English by the 3rd grade. And of course, that's not because these kids are, dumb, and it's not because that they're just intellectually struggling to get it. It's a lot of the time because they're growing up in households that maybe don't speak English in the home, or they don't have those kinds of immediate kinetic family supports for language acclimation and language acquisition that they might need in order to kind of get that leg up. And so often, if they're being taught in a language that they don't understand, and if there's not necessarily those multilingual supports present always to back them up, it can be very hard, as you guys well know, for kids to succeed and to thrive at grade level. And so what we wanted to do, talking to educators and teachers around Georgia, around Gwinnett County, and really across America, was figure out a way that we could empower communities to help come together and help those kids, get that leg up and really foster that sense of early childhood literacy in their own communities, using students who look a lot like them and who might have come up from similar situations and made it, and who can, intrinsically bridge that gap between maybe it's a child who speaks only Spanish in the home, but needs to learn how to speak English and learn how to interact in an educational environment in both English and Spanish. Can we connect those two pretty disparate pieces and bring them together to create better outcomes for the next generation? And so what we've done is created this initiative called Preface. And so, like I said, I grew up in Gwinnett County, and coming back, getting to talk to great educators like Dr. Taylor and some of our incredible founding partners on the ground, we recognize that for a lot of children, their parents might be working multiple jobs just to make ends meet. They can't necessarily afford these expensive early childhood literacy programs and daycare centers and childcare opportunities, because in a lot of places, not just in Georgia, but around the South, those things can cost just as much as a four-year college, right, for a young child. And so we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just this people who could afford these things who were getting the benefits of real early childhood literacy care and early childhood education best practices. We wanted to make this accessible and achievable for communities across the country so that we're really connecting with underserved folks and children who might benefit the most from these programs. And so what we've done at Preface is we've developed a model to basically connect high achieving young students and, of course, service-minded young professionals who might be adjacent to those services with the resources, the training, and the tools to really make an immediate and a lasting impact on their communities. And we do that by injecting that educational assistance directly into the classrooms to assist you guys, the educators on the ground, where they need it most. We're not coming in here saying, oh, here's a completely new model and a completely new way of doing business. No. We're taking time-tested methods like mentorship, like peer-to-peer relational engagement, and we're layering that on to already existing, high-achieving young high school students who want to make a difference in their communities and who want to change lives. And we're giving them the tools and empowering them in the right ways to be able to bridge that gap to increase literacy acclimation for this next generation. And so, of course, you're probably wondering, well, how the heck is this all working? And so let me just give you a quick overview of the Preface perspective and how we've approached our model. And Dr. Taylor, obviously, as the educational expert in our room here today, please feel free to weigh in and kind of chime in with any additional thoughts and comments that you might have on this page. But really what we realized from our conversations and our research was that from birth to age 7, right, clinical research is indicating that that's the language acquisition process. It's a developmental spectrum. It's fueled by both positive in-home and out-of-home relationships. And when you pair that with frequent kind of dyadic responses and dialogic sessions with a child, that is one of the most effective ways to promote literacy growth. And so what we've done is we basically partnered with high schools and elementary schools around the country using kind of the cluster and feeder school model that is present in almost every public school district around the nation. And we've identified kind of these high achieving students in the high school setting we call Preface ambassadors. And they receive cutting edge continual training in techniques promoting child engagement, like the peer method of dialogic response. And we also evaluate, do you speak another language in addition to English? Because if you speak Spanish or you speak Korean or you speak Mandarin and there's a young child who speaks that in the home, and maybe that's the bridge between them and being able to read proficiently at the 3rd grade level. It's just that, maybe they're not really able to make that immediate connection between, oh, perro means dog, right? If you can have a child, if you can have a young one relating to a mentor who can make that connection for them and help them bridge those gaps through what we're calling kind of our bilingual methods approach, even when duty calls for parents and for caregivers, if they have to work jobs outside the home, they might not necessarily be able, to sit with their child in the evening and read Mozart or listen to Mozart and read kind of English books with them day in and day out. But we're helping to supplement that learning and that engagement while it's taking place in one of the most captive settings that you've got a student, which is in the classroom. And we're helping to really expand and magnify every educator's impact right there and right then, thanks to kind of our Preface ambassadorship model. And so what we're going through here, just kind of our bilingual methods approach. And so here in Gwinnett County, at least, that we're using as a case study, and what was really the genesis of our mission, is that the U.S. Census Bureau is estimating that about 10,000 children right here in Gwinnett County alone are both growing up in non-English speaking households and lacking in adequate English proficiency. And so, from our perspective and in talking with community leaders across the South, there's never really been a better time to leverage our own youth populations who may possess these skills innately to really promote effective language acclimation and literacy interventions. Because as you guys know, research shows that with the right supports, bilingual students are achieving fluency in both languages at a faster pace than students who might only receive a single language education. Not only that, though, our multilingual ambassadors encourage children in both their native kind of at-home languages as well as in English, their L2, using these very educationally best practice techniques like the crowd method, completion, recall, open-ended questions, why-word questions, distancing. And they can shift seamlessly between both of those languages to bridge those knowledge gaps through kind of this additive model of scaffolded dialogue. And not only that, far from being an English-only model, these methods of dialogic response have been clinically proven to be effective across languages and across monolingual cultural backgrounds. So that really allows us to not only have this be an effective program for students, high school students who are bilingual, but also students who are monolingual as well. And as Dr. Taylor and I can attest to, in our initial pilot programs, which we'll talk about just a little bit later, we've seen that work. We've had students, ambassadors who speak both Spanish and English, or French and English, or Thai and English, or Vietnamese and English. But we've also had students who only speak English, and they've come up to us and said, how can we serve? How can we give back to our communities? Can we be a part of this program? And the answer obviously is yes. And what we saw was very effective in that literacy acclimation was increased among all of those groups, not just limited to folks with bilingual applications. And so while this is kind of a dual language immersion focused conference, and we're very excited to be here and presenting to y'all, we wanted just to kind of let y'all know that and keep that in the back of your minds, and that these methods, these mentorship models that we've developed are not just kind of solely exclusive to the multilingual realm. They're very much monolingual applications as well. And so what does our model look like? The Preface Partnership, we've created our model because we believe that engagement doesn't stop at the doorstep. So we train our students to set the tone so that caregivers can use our playbook to create kind of optimal learning environments in their own homes. And so the first step of this, of course, is kind of reading techniques and best practices. We train our ambassadors in dialogic responses, finger-led reading. We train them to promote positive relationships and enthusiasm, voice inflections, and having a fun and positive environment associated with learning that we think helps create and maintain that environment even when they go back into the home. Enjoyable take-home activities and bilingual phrase sheets are just some additional ways that we're really helping to create a positive learning environment for our students. And I know one of the questions, and we're going to get to this later, is, well, gosh, this all sounds great, but what do I have to do? And I think one of the most exciting parts of the Preface model that we've developed is that really as educators, as administrators, as folks who are responsible for kind of the day-to-day running of your schools, you're already overwhelmed and you're already dealing with a lot of things as it is. And so what we did was deliberately design a model that is free, that is absolutely no cost to the partner schools that we partner with, and that is inherently tailored and customizable to the unique needs of every single school and every single district that we're working with. And so we'll get to some examples of how we do that just a little bit later on, but wanted to kind of ease any concerns that might be popping up into your heads in the meantime. And so when we're looking here, what are our 3 pillars of progress? As an organization, we wanted to create and we wanted to innovate something that, was definitely grounded in educational best practices, but also grounded in a fundamental belief that, hey, not rocket science, relationships matter. Peer-to-peer engagement is one of the best ways to promote learning and to promote kind of lifelong success in these young communities. And so that's how we've attempted to structure every single aspect of how we approach our mentorship models, how we approach our ambassadorship models, and really how we approach things as an organization. And so the first pillar here is community engagement, right? We want to establish public-private partner relationships with y'all on the ground to create these self-sustaining youth volunteer pipelines that can be, a legacy really on the ground for years to come. And so I know in our initial pilot programs here in Gwinnett County, what we've accomplished and what we've established is definitely growing. The kids love it. They love what they do. They enjoy getting to take time out of their days to go and serve and to work with these little ones. And they've told their friends about it. And so, every single orientation session that we go on campus to do, we get like an expanding group of students who are interested because they've heard from their friends, wow, this is a fun way to make a difference. You're reading and you're working with little children to make sure that they understand, what's being put in front of them in much the same way that maybe an older brother or an older sister did for you when you were that age. And to them, giving them that kind of sense of service and showing that they can inspire tangible hope, not even necessarily after years and years of educational training, but really as who you are, as a high school student, that we've seen has been such a positive impact in their lives. Of course, we always try to focus on the relational uplift aspect as well. We want to provide support for caregivers who might have a lot going on outside of the home, and that's what we're here for. We're here to make the classroom experience. We're here to make your jobs as educators in the classroom that much more impactful and that much more powerful for these young children. And again, we're grounded kind of in educational impact and best practices, right? On our board and our advisory council, we've got, decades and decades of public and private school service experience, decades in kind of the early childhood literacy space. And we use that to create a holistic framework as we're thinking about how do we actually train our ambassadors? What techniques are the most important things for them to learn? And we marry that with Well, here on the ground, what works in Gwinnett County might not be what's needed in Charleston. It might not be what's needed in Chattanooga. It might not be what's needed in rural Eastern North Carolina, So when we're talking to our educational partners on the ground, when we have our initial partnership meetings with high schools and elementary schools, we say, what are your teachers doing on the ground? And how can we continue to come alongside them and train our ambassadors to really make sure that they're doing the things that you want them to be doing in the classroom to set up the next generation for future success. And so we won't spend a ton of time on kind of these slides, but just so you guys get a sense of what a case study could look like. Here on the ground in Gwinnett County, we partnered with Lilburn Elementary School and Berkmar High School as our kind of initial partnership schools in a very diverse area of Georgia, incredible multilinguistic diversity and demographic diversity as well. And we also brought in outside partners like the Duluth Rotary and the Gwinnett Library. And so what we did was we sat down with the elementary schools and the high school, and we said, hey, what are some times that could work for you where you could have, the flexibility and the bandwidth to host a couple of high school students who would be, very community oriented, highly motivated to serve, and really here to assist your teachers in the classroom on the ground. And so once we ironed out those logistical, little potholes, we got the kids to work and we started training them and giving them the tools that they needed to really inspire relational uplift in that next generation. And so what we've seen, and we took a survey at the end of it and said, how did you guys feel about this, this model? How did you guys feel about being able to get into the classrooms and actually dig deep and innovate in, using your bilingualism and your multilingualism as an asset to help inspire these young students? And what a lot of them said was, I hadn't really thought about what I wanted to do from a secondary educational standpoint after this, but now I realize, I want to be a teacher and I'm interested in a career in education and in social work. And to be able to see, these young high school students' eyes light up like that was just a fantastic experience for us. And it really gave us hope that, yes, this is not only helping the young students, but for all our high school educators on the line here, this is helping to inspire that next generation of educators and that next generation of teachers to give back to their communities and to see what it could really be like on the ground, living a life of service. And lastly, of course, like we've said, educational impact is very, very important to us. And so we train all of our high school ambassadors in these best-in-class early childhood literacy techniques, blending local expert insights with the language skills that they have inherently to meet the needs of the underserved, kind of student population that might need the most help in the elementary schools on the ground. At the same time, we have continual comprehensive training led by some of our award-winning advisors. And we believe that, equalizing these baselines of opportunity through basic language familiarity is one of the best ways to set these students up for success. And so, of course, we don't come in and try to have one size fits all restrictive models because every community is going to be different. And at the same time, we really take that approach to how we evaluate our success. And so one of the biggest things that, here in Georgia, at least we know is that our kids get tested a lot. Some might say too much, but what we wanted to do was figure out a way to work within existing frameworks that you as educators already have on the ground. And so what we did was we basically structured how we evaluate our success to be right in line with existing state mandated kind of official and unofficial standardized tests. And so here in Georgia, that was obviously the milestones testing. And so our elementary school partners were already doing unofficial benchmarking testing for literacy every single month. And so what we said was, hey, these 4 things are, according to the National Academy of Arts and Sciences, the best ways to evaluate literacy and fluency success in the life of a young child. You're already examining many of these things through your existing standardized assessment methods. So why don't we come alongside you and basically just utilize some of the existing measurements that you're taking in class and use that as a benchmark for how we can look at the Preface model of success going forward. And so there's no outside tests, there's no outside curriculums or anything like that. What we do here as Preface is we basically empower and train high school students in your own community using best practices that you guys are already using in your classrooms day to day to really then just come in and make a difference and help really bring these kids up from a literacy standpoint to where we all know they can be. And so, of course, these metrics are things like oral fluency, phonological awareness, sound identification, and text and story comprehension. And what we've seen here in Gwinnett County has been absolutely incredible. So the initial results are in, and we think it's pretty safe to say that Preface is already changing lives. So as you can see here, Preface students are making gains in literacy skills nearly twice as fast as other students in their grade. And despite starting the year barely reading, we deliberately wanted to work with students who were having the most difficulty, who were functionally illiterate at the start of the year. But by the end of the year, even with COVID, all of our students were on track. That's over 24 little ones to read at or above grade level by May. And last but not least, of course, the Preface students with the most frequent and consistent interactions with our ambassadors were experiencing even higher gains in skills relative to their peers. And as you can see from the chart below, and again, happy to get into some of the methodology around here if that's ever of interest to anyone on this group. But what we've seen is that, this isn't rocket science. It's a very fundamentally straightforward thesis that all of y'all as educators instinctively know, which is that relationships matter, that peer-to-peer connections are effective, and that if you can continue to make those connections happen in small group settings, especially when you're standardizing across, kind of multilingual components, that can be such an effective way to enhance the impact that you're having as educators in the classroom, just like that. And so what we've seen here, like I said, over these 4 testing period differentials, our top tier Preface students have improved nearly twice as fast as other students in their grade, even when you're controlling for things like, socioeconomic status and kind of literacy starting points for many of these students in the control groups. So we're very excited about these analyses and these preliminary results. But you don't have to just take our word for it, right? These have been administrator approved, and you can hear what some of our educational partners have had to say, both on the high school end of things, as well as the elementary school side of things. And so, Preface has been an invaluable opportunity for our high school students to give back meaningfully, to strengthen their communities and set them up for future educational success. Providing an exceptional hands-on experience in dynamic classroom settings. And I love this phrase, the teachers of tomorrow, right? That's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help connect students who want to serve, who want to give back to their communities, particularly in these unprecedented and very trying modern times. And we want to give them an outlet to say, you can make that difference in your small way, in your classrooms, in your communities. And while it might feel small to you right now, you're setting a child up for a lifetime of future success. And that is something that, you really can't shake a stick at. And so, Dr. Taylor, maybe I'll pause there and see if, you wanted to weigh in on anything, and we can obviously get into some of the more logistical aspects of it down the line, but maybe I'll stop talking for a second and kick it over to you and see if you had anything you wanted to say.
No, well, you're doing a great job, and this is your baby, and it out. But as a school principal and from a practical perspective as well, and perhaps I wanted to make sure we leave some space for any questions that may be at the end.
Absolutely.
But just from my perspective as a school principal, I worked in a highly Title I. 90% of the students in the school were on free and reduced lunch. 2/3, over 60% of the students spoke second languages. So I had a very high ESOL population. And so when you add in the poverty perspective as well as the second language perspective, one of the things that I noticed as an educator in those areas is that many of our students were just not ready when they got to school. So they were behind the 8 ball in many ways. And literacy is one of those ways that can actually help improve the conditions in the situation. As ESOL, English to students of second languages, are primary in schools like that one, and English is what's being taught. But one of the things I noticed as an educator, as a school principal, is that for many of our students, their first language was so important still. And using that first language in combination with what they were having to learn to read was something that I sought as a principal. It wasn't really there. And so when JT started talking about Preface, it was like, wow, that's the light bulb. We don't want our children to lose that second language as they're learning English. And so this is a great opportunity, and it's a no cost, and it's a primary opportunity for students who are in high school. So it's really that high school perspective as well, because those high school students are getting community service, things that they can use for their applications for college. And a lot of high schools have programs that are focused on preparing students for education, or at least to see if that's something that they want to do. So it's a win-win on both ends. So that's all I wanted to share at this point, and I'll pass it back on to you, JT.
Thanks, Dr. Taylor. No, we appreciate that. And your perspective and support as an educator has been incredibly invaluable, especially for some of these final things that we're going to chat through. And I know there's probably questions on the line. I want to get to them. So this is a quick overview of, how do we pitch this to your students, right? If you're a high school teacher, getting kids excited and interested in service can sometimes be challenging. And so we come in and we really try to make it and pitch it as a way for you to not only form connections with your communities, but also as a way to, gain access to kind of our network of advisors. We have young professionals and established leaders all across the world who recognize that this is such a fundamentally important issue. And boy, we want to help you help your community. And, intangibly related to that, obviously our connections and mentorship opportunities for these ambassadors that we have that we think are just hugely invaluable. And so we've actually, been blessed to be able to write scholarship letters for some of our ambassadors as they pursue careers in higher education and secondary education. And so that to us is one of the most exciting parts about this, is not only seeing the impact that we can have in a young child's life, but also directly impacting the next generation of future leaders and teachers. And from a sample logistics perspective, last year our model was primarily in person. And obviously this year with the COVID-19 pandemic, that can be a little bit more challenging. But also we felt that was a really prime opportunity for us to lean into the virtual aspect of things, lean into that virtual element of service, and really explore how we could start to connect students across the country with folks who maybe are in their own backyard, who may not have been, an 8-minute drive away, but maybe they're 15, 20 minutes drive away. So you couldn't actually do this in person during the school day or during a normal in-person school year. But now that you're virtual, now that you're remote, now that you have this opportunity to just kind of hop on into a secure Google Meet room like this, boy, what an excellent opportunity that could be to really continue to drive home these mentorship opportunities and mentorship pipelines for students for years to come. And so, we've been featured, and we're blessed to be featured in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, especially when the COVID-19 epidemic started coming out. We had some generous sponsors, and we were able to work with our communities, our educational communities, and leverage those connections to help distribute, medical supplies, meals, PPE, things like that for students in need. But also, we've continued to innovate. We received a lot of feedback from students that said, we want to do this. We just, we don't have consistent access to a car when we were in person. We can't necessarily always get over to the elementary schools in the afternoons. And so we said, all right, you know what? No problem. We're going to roll up our sleeves and help you get it done. And so we basically went out, and as a kind of private-public partnership, we were blessed to be able to have this as a national umbrella and go out to sponsors and allies and advocates from across the public and private sectors. And we established a transportation fund for our ambassadors. So we said, we don't want costs, we don't want transportation issues to be a barrier for you serving. Obviously, when it comes to a remote environment, less of an issue, but that is something that we realized was impacting our students' capability and ability to take advantage of this, and we wanted to fix that. Same thing with kind of our International Advisory Board and our Expansion Director initiatives. We had a lot of inbounds from folks who were really excited and intrigued by this opportunity to transform kind of their relationship with their local high schools and say, hey, instead of just being a place where our students go after they graduate from elementary school, why don't you all come on back and help create a really strong and thriving ecosystem of learning for years to come. And so they have helped us actually make a lot of connections, not only across the United States, but also globally, in trying to figure out how can this model really be adapted to work and be customizable for a variety of different platforms and languages and communities across the world. And so last but not least, wanted to spend some time on our innovation that we developed here for our virtual portal. Like we said, our in-person model has seen amazing results, and we know just how powerful and impactful in-person relationships can be. But obviously with the pandemic throwing a wrench in everything, we're all sitting here in a Google Meet room right now. We needed to get out in front of things, and we needed to innovate. And so that's exactly what we did. And this is entirely free, as Dr. Taylor has said, to our partner schools who are interested in working with us and customizing this to their unique environments. But what we've done is created an online portal. You can check this out at prefaceproject.org/portal, and we'll have a link at the end of this. But what we've done is created a secure scheduling system where unique links are generated and sent to both the ambassadors and their designated mentees that are, selected by you as educators and principals on the ground. What we would do if you were in elementary school is if there's a high school student that's interested, we'd send you their profile and you say, hey, this sounds like a great fit for Johnny and Susie. That would be a great mentorship pair or small group for us to kind of get started with. And so every single time that Johnny's available to be an ambassador and kind of connect with the little ones, they would sign up on this link. We would send them a link to a secure meeting room just like this, and they could present their screen. We would train them, and of course, all of the best practices that you would want them to be trained in. And we provide resources. So worksheets, accessible and available activities for every single student that are easily usable across devices. We provide story libraries, so multilingual, bilingual books, monolingual books as well. We've partnered with a variety of sources, including Epic, which offers 40,000 free books varied by grade level and topic that students can choose from. So those are tailored book selections that you would help us pick for what's relevant to your community, at your fingertips. And at the same time, just like we're doing right now, audio-visual presentation, simultaneous reaction. You can see the students' reactions. You can highlight things on the screen for them. And that's just another way to kind of make sure that they're being able to have these mentorship opportunities and that these kids are getting the relational engagement that they need, even in this kind of fully remote virtual environment. And so we're excited about that because we think this is a really exciting way to help mitigate that learning loss, right? That might inevitably come from extended periods of just not being able to connect in person with students. If we can train our high schoolers, these kids that sometimes, I see the faces of the little ones light up when these high schoolers walk into the room because they're like superheroes to them, right? If we can train them to really give back and to be such a light to these little ones and do it in a way that's accessible and multilingually taking advantage of all of their kind of inherent and unique gifts, we think that that's a really, really exciting value proposition. And that's exciting for communities, not just here in Georgia, but all across the country. Oh, and like we said, it's all completely free, thanks to our generous sponsorship and our innovative models of support. And so maybe I'll end here before we head to the Q&A screen. Know we're coming up against the clock, so I want to get time in for questions, but we've grown incredibly rapidly. So as you can see here, one little partnership here in Gwinnett, impacting the lives of 24 students, has grown into truly a national presence. And so we're blessed to have established beachheads in states across the Southeast. So Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, and Texas, with additional conversations ongoing every single day. And so to the extent that anybody on this call, is interested and wants to learn more, we would love to get in touch with you because we really think that the tools and the training and the best practices that we've established are things that you're already doing in your classrooms every single day. What we try to bring to the table is just an additional pool of resources, right? Free hands, free dedicated, multilingual, trained hands to help assist your teachers, if that's in person in the classroom, or if that's remote during virtual learning sessions through our virtual ambassador portal that we've innovated. We think that these things aren't just confined to being useful here in Gwinnett County. They can be applied to communities all across the country, as you've seen here, and all across the world. And so we are excited about kind of what we've built here together, about bridging divides, bridging gaps by bringing communities together. And we couldn't be more excited to take your questions.